Eric and Sarah were siblings, inseparable from childhood. To neighbors, they were just a close brother and sister. But as they grew, their bond crossed into dangerous territory. What started as simple affection grew into something they couldn't control, something they both knew was wrong but couldn't seem to resist. Their relationship, hidden from everyone, became a forbidden love neither of them could escape. As their lives spiraled out of control, their love turned toxic, filled with jealousy, obsession, and fear. The pressure mounted until one tragic night, when the secret they had protected so fiercely finally tore their family apart. On April 2nd, 2019, in a quiet, unassuming town of Westfield, Indianapolis, two siblings, Eric and Sarah, harbored a dark secret. From the outside, their family appeared perfect: successful parents, a charming home, and bright futures ahead. But beneath the veneer of normalcy lay a forbidden passion that neither could resist. It began as innocent moments, stolen glances, lingering touches, and whispered conversations that hinted at something deeper. Eric, 5 years older than Sarah, had always been protective of her. But as they grew older, that protectiveness transformed into something dangerous. It was at a family gathering when Eric first felt the magnetic pull that drew him to Sarah in ways he couldn't comprehend. The lines between familial love and desire blurred, and soon, what was once brotherly affection turned into a secret relationship that neither of them could stop. The thrill of the forbidden made it all the more intoxicating, and they found themselves tangled in a web of deceit. Sarah, torn between guilt and desire, questioned their actions late at night. She knew society would never understand. Their parents would be horrified. But Eric always reassured her, convincing her that what they had was special, unique, even if the world didn't accept it. Together, they convinced themselves it was their little secret, one that could never hurt anyone. The secret affair intensified, and their bond became an all-consuming fire. Eric and Sarah met in hidden places, away from prying eyes, savoring each forbidden kiss, each stolen moment. But what started as a thrilling game of passion quickly spiraled into obsession. Eric became possessive, unable to bear the thought of Sarah with anyone else. Jealousy, once a foreign emotion, started to gnaw at him whenever he saw her speaking to other men. The tension between them built, but they maintained the facade of a perfect sibling relationship in public. No one suspected a thing, not even their parents. They had become skilled at wearing masks, playing their parts perfectly. But secrets, no matter how carefully kept, have a way of unraveling. One evening, at a family dinner, their mother casually mentioned Sarah's interest in a boy at school. Eric's knuckles whitened as he clenched his fork. The thought of Sarah being with someone else sent him into a quiet rage. Later that night, in the privacy of their clandestine meeting spot, Eric confronted Sarah. The argument was explosive. Emotions they had buried deep began to surface, and cracks began to show in their relationship. As months passed, the weight of their secret began to take its toll. Sarah struggled to maintain a sense of normalcy. She started to withdraw from friends. Her grades plummeted, and rumors began circulating about her strange behavior. Eric, on the other hand, grew more isolated, paranoid that someone might uncover their secret. His once calm and composed demeanor turned erratic. August 6, 2019. Their parents, unaware of the storm brewing within their home, attributed their children's changes to the usual teenage angst. But behind closed doors, Eric and Sarah were on the edge. Their love had become toxic, suffocating, and neither knew how to escape it. The once thrilling rush of their forbidden romance had soured, leaving behind only pain and resentment. Things took a darker turn when Sarah met James, a boy from her college class. For the first time in years, Sarah felt a sense of normalcy, a chance at a life beyond her destructive relationship with Eric. She kept her new friendship a secret, knowing Eric's volatile temper. But Eric wasn't blind. He saw the way she smiled at her phone, the way she started staying out later, and he knew something was wrong. One night, Eric followed Sarah. When he saw her with James, laughing and carefree, something inside him snapped. Eric couldn't control his rage. That night, he confronted Sarah again. But this time, it wasn't just anger. It was pure, unfiltered jealousy. Their argument escalated beyond anything they had experienced before, and for the first time, Sarah truly feared him. She realized the dangerous path they had walked for so long, and it terrified her. Desperate to escape, Sarah tried to break free, but Eric refused to let her go. He told her she belonged to him, that no one else could ever have her. But Sarah was determined. She secretly planned her escape, reaching out to James for help. She knew she couldn't live under Eric's possessive hold any longer. Little did she know, Eric had already discovered her plan. On a cold, rainy evening, Sarah packed her things, ready to leave everything behind and start fresh. But as she stepped outside, Eric was waiting. His eyes, once filled with love, were now dark and hollow. What followed was a confrontation that neither of them would survive unscathed. In a moment of blind rage, Eric attacked Sarah, unable to bear the thought of losing her to someone else. The brutality of his actions shocked even him, but by then, it was too late. Sarah lay lifeless at his feet, the forbidden love that had once bound them, now nothing but a tragic memory. September 12, 2019. The weight of his actions crashed down on Eric. He had killed the one person he loved more than anything in the world. Desperation and regret filled him as he cradled her body, knowing there was no turning back. He had destroyed everything. The discovery of Sarah's body sent shockwaves through the town. The police investigation unearthed the dark, twisted relationship between the siblings, leaving the community in disbelief. The truth shattered their family, leaving behind a trail of grief, betrayal, and horror. Eric was arrested, but in his mind, he was already living in a prison of his own making. The once passionate love he had shared with Sarah had turned into a nightmare. As he sat in his cold, dimly lit cell, Eric replayed the events over and over, unable to comprehend how everything had gone so wrong. In the end, their forbidden love became their downfall, a tragic story of desire, jealousy, and betrayal that would haunt the family forever. Eric's trial became the focal point of public outrage. As the case unfolded, the sordid details of the incestuous relationship shocked everyone who once knew the family as quiet and loving. The defense attempted to argue that Eric had been mentally unwell, driven to madness by his overwhelming emotions. But the prosecution painted a different picture, a calculating young man consumed by jealousy, willing to commit the ultimate betrayal for love. Witnesses were called, and the affair became the center of media attention. The courtroom was packed with reporters and spectators. Sarah's friends testified about her strange behavior in the months leading up to her death, and James was forced to relive the horrifying discovery of her body. As the trial dragged on, Eric sat in silence, his face a mask of regret and confusion. But deep down, he knew there was no redemption for what he had done. November 3rd, 2019. The jury deliberated for hours, weighing the evidence. Was this an act of temporary insanity, or was Eric fully responsible for his actions? When the verdict finally came, the courtroom held its breath. The jury found Eric guilty of second-degree murder, a decision that left the town divided. Some believed he deserved worse, while others saw him as a victim of circumstance, driven to madness by a love that society could never understand. The judge sentenced him to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. The weight of his punishment was heavy, but not as heavy as the guilt he carried within him. In prison, Eric became a shadow of his former self. He refused to speak to anyone, living in isolation, tormented by the memory of what he had done. Every night, he dreamt of Sarah, her laughter, her smile, and the life they could have had if things had been different. Meanwhile, the rest of the family struggled to pick up the pieces of their shattered lives. Their once perfect home was now a symbol of betrayal, a place filled with painful memories. Eric and Sarah's parents were devastated, grappling with the loss of their daughter and the horrifying truth about their son. They blamed themselves for not seeing the signs, for not stopping the tragedy before it spiraled out of control. November 16th, 2019. Their grief was compounded by the public shame they endured. Friends and neighbors distanced themselves, unwilling to be associated with the scandal. The family's reputation was forever tarnished, and they became pariahs in their own community. Sarah's funeral was a small, somber affair. Her parents couldn't bear the thought of a large public service, fearing the whispers and stares of the townspeople. As they laid their daughter to rest, they were haunted by the thought of what might have been. They had lost not one, but two children, Sarah to death and Eric to his crime. Years passed, but the scars of the tragedy never fully healed. The story of Eric and Sarah became a cautionary tale, whispered among locals who remembered the quiet family that had once lived among them. The house where the siblings grew up was sold, but no one stayed there for long. Rumors spread that it was haunted, cursed by the forbidden love that had led to Sarah's death. Eric, now in his 40s, remained behind bars, a ghost of the man he once was. He never sought parole, knowing that freedom would never truly be his. His punishment was not just the years he spent in prison, but the knowledge that he had destroyed everything he held dear. Occasionally, he received letters from his parents, but he never wrote back. The guilt was too much to bear, and he couldn't face them. In his mind, he had become a monster, unworthy of their forgiveness or love. Despite the passage of time, the town never forgot the story of Eric and Sarah. New generations grew up hearing about the siblings whose love crossed dangerous boundaries. The town had moved on, but the memory of that dark chapter lingered, like a stain that couldn't be washed away. For many, the story was a reminder of the dangers of unchecked desire, of the thin line between love and obsession. It became a warning to others, a tale of how even the closest of families could be torn apart by secrets and lies. As Eric approached his 50th year in prison, he began to reflect on his life with a new perspective. He started attending counseling sessions, trying to make sense of the choices he had made. He knew he could never undo the past, but he wanted to understand it, to find some measure of peace. In his sessions, he spoke about his relationship with Sarah, acknowledging the wrongness of it for the first time. He realized that what they had wasn't love. It was a twisted reflection of it, born out of loneliness and confusion. Eric began to write letters to Sarah, though he had no one to send them to. It was his way of seeking forgiveness, of trying to heal the wounds that could never be healed. Eric never left prison. One winter morning, the guards found him in his cell, lifeless. He had died in his sleep, his body worn down by years of guilt and regret. His parents, now elderly themselves, attended his quiet burial, saying their final goodbye to the son they had lost long before. In death, Eric found the peace he had sought for so long. The story of Eric and Sarah ended where it had begun, with a family torn apart by love, betrayal, and tragedy. The story of Eric and Sarah serves as a grim reminder of the dangers of forbidden love and the destructive power of secrets. In the end, their relationship wasn't just a violation of societal norms, it was a tragedy that consumed everyone in its path. For the town that remembered them, their story was a warning. Love, when twisted and unchecked, can become a force of unimaginable destruction.